Greetings, my friends. This is Maerlande. I am joined today by my Hydra partner, Vinlande.
Hello, everyone.
So we are going to do a pre-recording for the game on Lucid Tactics server, Friggin Allstars, which is a draft game. So I'm going to start with, we'll start with the rules. So we got to drag those over here. And we'll jump to the rules first. Sort of explain how this is supposed to go. So this is a spreadsheet. It's actually, I believe, publicly viewable. You don't have to be part of the game. So we had to do a draft process. And how many steps were there in the draft? 4, right? 4 steps total?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. So your first step was these first 3 picks. You had to pick a base nation, one commander, or 2 commanders, or 2 units. Correct? If I remember correctly.
The first step was just the nation and a commander.
Unit,
it could be 1 commander or 1 unit.
Okay. So, and then you move on and you can get more units or commanders. No, we had to pick our capital only commander in the first pick, correct?
No, you had a choice. It didn't have to be.
We had a choice. It didn't have to be.
The second pick was a unit or commander again, which could be cap only at that point, or you could use one of your wild cards.
Right. So it's not entirely clear from this just what choices of picks you get, but these are the total picks you're allowed in the game, and the order in which we picked them. So, oops, I'm on the wrong screen here. We need to take a moment here. So if we scroll down a little, these are the bands. Whoops, I went a little too far, didn't I? For the bands. Band picks. So there's base nation bands. Red nations are bands. There's some restrictions, yellow and orange nations. So we could jump over to that tab briefly. So I'm not going to get into a complicated discussion of this, but most of the free spawn nations were banned. Certain other nations that have a tendency to sort of trash the game, like Lemuria, you could see Middle Age Armor, those sorts of things. Because free spawn, when you've got limited troops, or free spawn for the nation, can get out of control. Dominion-based free spawn.
Yeah, and the foreign recruit was typically those were orange nations, so you could pick the nation, but you wouldn't get the foreign recruit options for that nation. And probably should mention this was all nations. It wasn't any particular age. So
that's correct. Good point. And then there's some funny special picks like the Troll King, Troll Shaman, Milk Cards, oddballs for spells. But we didn't really go into any of that particularly ourselves. We stuck, I think, fairly simple.
Yeah, I did when I was doing my analysis of units. I did look at the troll stuff, but it didn't fit the path we were going down, so it didn't spend a lot of time on those.
Yeah, I felt it didn't particularly fit our meme or theme. I'm not going to call it a meme because that sort of implies we weren't thinking clearly about it.
So there were some people that went the meme route. So
there were. So I think we've kind of talked about this. So what I'm going to do is let's sort things by first pick. So I'll go back to the mod inspector, and I'm going to sort things by the order we chose them. Whoops. Oh, got a glitch here. So I'm going to move all the stuff that was for later down below. And that should kind of highlight how we went about our decision-making process. And so this, I believe, was our first pick. Nemedian Sorceress, and then
no, that was just right? The first pick. So it was we had to pick a base
nation, and a first
unit or commander.
Right. So our concept. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say. I think when we talked about it initially, we sort of, and whether we'll see how this plays out in the game, whether it's right or wrong. But at least in my mind, the thinking was pick what kind of base nation do you want from a magic perspective.
I agree.
Do you want to be a blood nation?
I was thinking, particularly in terms of your starting gem supply and your starting mage, so that they synergize.
Yep.
And so that's why, air death, basically.
Yep. And I think when you look at all of the different units, and there aren't many really good air death nations out there when you really think about it that can get, and Femoria is an interesting pick because it does have sort of a unique spell. That's the other thing. I think
we should have talked about that. Yeah, we get the spells. We get the Femoria national spells, and we get possible picks of more national spells. So why am I not seeing the right spells here? I gotta turn this. Oh, it takes a moment. There we go.
Yep.
So we got Morgans. Black Dogs and Barghest were priority for us, but we were definitely keen on both Morgans and Dance of the Morgans.
Yeah, Dance of the Morgans is one of those spells that is certainly up there as far as its power goes.
Right. But we knew that it was going to take us, if you look at the randoms on the medians, a little bit of effort and a little bit of luck to be able to cast Dance of the Morgans. I mean, arguably, you can cast it with a Death 4 because it's a 4-gem spell, and we should have a reasonable number of Death 3s with Forge a Skullstaff, and you're kind of off and running. Yep. But it's not perfection.
I think
but it's also it's pretty late in the game as well.
Yes, Conjuration 8, so it's not an early scenario. But in that sense, you have Wailing Winds, which is a very powerful spell. Wind of Death.
Absolutely.
You get Skelly spam, so that's sort of. I always like to think of that as the free spawn in your pocket, right? So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So if you look, particularly if you go for the path requirements, the top ones, things like Wailing Winds here, and Wind of Death, and etc. etc. I'm not going to worry about the summons much. So that was kind of our first pick. Was this sort of basic toolkit, is how I would describe it.
And yeah, Nemedian was when we looked at, that was the other thing as far as at least in my mind, the cap only mage that I was looking at. I like the Nemedian Sorceress because she's a very powerful mage, spell singer, being able to really cast high fatigue spells and do it multiple times is nice. But I think the other thing is she's not sacred, so I was thinking that whatever sacred we do pick, we'll be able to get an extra one without bumping against whatever commander we're recruiting out of the cap.
Yeah, in the long run, she's a little pricier because upkeep, and also there are only 2 commander points, so we can buy a lot of them. I mean, if we can afford them. Gold is going to be an issue.
Yeah, so, there's always a trade-off somewhere, right? But I didn't want, or was trying to avoid, I guess, slow to recruit mages.
Yeah.
And then trying to make sure we could pump out some extra sacreds without using one holy point on our commander.
That's right. And we should probably pop out here for a moment. I'm going to switch over to move this window out of the way. Takes a second. And bring over the pick list. And then our order in the pick was kind of smack dab in the middle, 6th of 12.
Yeah, and at first I was concerned, but actually that's a great spot. We don't, since it's a snake draft,
that's
we
right.
Always picked at the same spot every round, which is nice.
Yeah, you could see that there was 4 rounds of picks, so we didn't end up fighting over any of our picks. We lost one possible option, right? We had talked about. We'll get to that, I think, on third pick.
Mm-hmm.
But we had only competition on one of our picks.
Yeah, the only thing that came into play a little bit was there was, and this was some confusion about how the draft went, because there was a rule that said you couldn't pick blood spells that summoned units.
That's correct.
But it sort of got changed around a little bit through the draft. And if you ever do one of these, always ask questions as far as to get clarification of rules, just so everyone's on the same page. But the only spell that I considered that I think got picked sooner was the summon Shaitan spell from that standpoint, which is a blood 6, I think is what it is. But
right.
Not saying that definitively would have picked it, but it's certainly a powerful enough unit that you make that a consideration as far as an option. And Lucid picked that spell, so which fits the theme of I think the nation he was going. So I think that's why he picked it second.
Yeah, I think so.
Which makes sense.
Well, I think we can move on to our second pick. So I highlighted the line here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll swap windows here briefly. Actually, there's an easier way for me to go about doing this stuff. I forgot about this. So bring that window back over. And what I do is I just change the order of which one shows first. There we go. So that's a little easier to manipulate. So jump windows. All right, so we can kind of move our first picks off to the side. Now I'll turn off Wind of Death because these are built in and generic. Turn off some of the more Dance of the Morgans. We've talked about those. I'll leave the sights over here and then Immediate Sorceress just to demonstrate. This is kind of how we put this. Yeah, we'll just set that right over top for, and then tuck that in here. Okay, so the second picks were Master Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And where is she? Centaur? No, Van Heers.
Right. It was the
Van Heers and Dryads.
Yeah. Yep.
Where is she? Where is she? No, not there. I got things over top of each other, but we'll get to it. There she is.
She is. Yep.
Okay, so there's pick 2. So we've got a really broad selection, and when we picked Master Smith, people kind of freaked out.
Yes.
An awful lot of people consider this the best mage in the game.
Yes, and for lots of different. I'll say that the one thing for me, I don't know if I'm the least experienced person in this game, but I will certainly say doing this exercise was very eye-opening to not only nations, but the units that are in the game and how they can potentially be used.
Well, we should talk about the jobs we kind of took on. The drafting took us a full week and a lot of work, and what you did is you went into the Mod Inspector and dug up all kinds of things that you thought were very interesting. My role was somewhat to say, well, okay, the synergies here and here are such and such, like forging for if we have thugs or whatever. And then I pulled out some oddities that you weren't as familiar with, for example, if I remember correctly.
Oh, absolutely.
And then, but we really were working towards synergies. So lots of sight surging capability. And I felt I really wanted at least one seducer. Plus, we had a focus towards stealth. And because we had a stealthy capital mage, we took a stealthy secondary mage in the Dryad. And eventually, plus these guys are glamored, so they're stealthy Van Heers. The Master Smiths are not, but they're like researchers and sit at home and forge and sight search. I mean, that was we'll be using them for earth buffs and some other buffs in battles. But we did do a real focus towards stealthy.
Yeah, and there's things we can do with them for that, not to give away too much in reference to some strategy options.
I wouldn't worry too much because we'll be well on turn 30 when this goes up. So people have probably seen most of our starting strategies by then.
Yeah, but you can put the shade mail on them for if they're going to go out with an army, so that way not seeing.
Although we're going to be a little hard pressed to build shade mails. In fact, we have to use the Pretender.
I thought, didn't the Pretender Numidians, was it Earth?
It's Earth and Death. Yeah, Numidian sorceresses don't get Earth.
They do not. Nope.
So a shade mail is not an easy option. That doesn't mean we can't, work out a way to get some. And you may only want a little bit of it.
Yeah, you only need one of the pieces. I don't think you need it.
But interestingly enough, it's the only item in the game that gives stealth. There's numerous stealth boosting items, which I'm pretty skeptical of, because the way stealth works is most of the time it's kind of almost binary.
Yeah.
You're either hidden or you're not, and if somebody tries to find you, they will. And if they don't try to find you, you're hidden. And if you've got an army of any size whatsoever, any amount of PD will find it.
Yep.
So, okay. So I think we can move on to comfortably.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting point. We talked about seduction, right? That's where the Shaitan was in the discussion from a standpoint since of its corruptor.
That's right.
Front.
Right.
But again, didn't necessarily fit with the nation because you had to go down blood in order to get that, and that wasn't something not that we could have done. We did look at a couple mages.
Sure.
Was it Kalos or Mandar? Kalos? No, Lanka, right?
We looked at a couple of Lankan options, but we kind of said, if we're going to go blood and you only go a little bit of it, we looked at Van Jarls as well.
Yep.
But we should move on to pick 3, because that's when we start adding these sort of extra bits. So far, pick 1 and pick 2 was our core concept.
Yep.
And we got everything we wanted. We compared various options for sacreds. Well, we should mention, and it gets into pick 3, and we didn't expect to have any competition on pick 3, and we didn't. So let me swap windows here. If we go to pick 3, and we highlight ourselves here. So the Centaur Warrior was really, we actually had chosen it earlier as our core fighting unit. And the Van Heers as a secondary because they're capital only. Right? I mean, that was the thinking. And with picking something that's, really tough but not sacred, what we're kind of saying is, it's stealthy, it's cavalry, it can expand on its own, it's not sacred, it just fills a whole bunch of gaps. So let me swap windows. And then the other piece of our third pick was the She-Lord, because we felt we wanted, you brought up, and it was an excellent point, Warrior Smiths and Dryads both can lead reasonably at 40 leadership, but not super well. We didn't have anything with formation capability, so we needed something with at least 80 leader.
Yeah, and I think it's worth bringing up, since that if you think about, and you go back to the sheet, you can either have basically 4 commanders, 4 units, or some, whatever combination thereof.
Oh, you mean the rules?
You can use, within the rules. Or you have 2 wildcard picks, which can be used, at least the way the sheet says, it talks about commanders or units, and then originally that's all it said, and then Lucid, I had a conversation with him, and he added spell and or items to that, because it's what a wildcard should be, but the original rules only had for units. But I can't, and some people did, they went with maybe only 1 unit or commander here and went with a spell or an item, mostly spells, I think, in that case, which was probably a unit spell when you think about it. But for us, I just always looked at it, in the back of my mind, that we were going to do some combination of 6 units and commanders. There's just, you have so few options, that I don't know how you go spell there otherwise.
Yeah, I was not personally comfortable with less than 2 units, and I was even a little questionable on 4 Magi, simply because it becomes really hard to pay for them. The gold issue becomes a problem. But here's our pick number. So let's move the prior picks over a little. We'll just tuck them over like that. So here's our third pick, and then Condors. So that was our third pick. So this is our, our core of combat is going to be Centaur Warriors and Condors. Vanheers are going to be, a relatively small number of them, depending on how many candles you pick in your Dominion. The She-Lords, two critical issues there: solid thugs, very solid thugs. The other things we compared were Van Jarls and Van Jarls, I believe, was the only thing else we really considered for this spot. We wanted a stealthy thug that could lead.
Yeah, and it was hard to find something that wasn't cap only.
That's right.
And or wasn't slow to recruit. There were plenty of options that were slow to recruit cap only still left. But that's the challenge that you run into with this unit selection, is that you don't want to become cap centric, or at least was trying to avoid that at all cost.
I agreed with you there, yeah.
Your units have to fill multiple roles because you have so few. So
that's correct.
The She-Lord sort of fit. That was the one thing: the leadership, and then it can thug.
Mm-hmm. And you could thug with Dryads, and I would argue, depending on how you describe thugging, Master Smiths could do some raiding with elemental gems and elementals and shenanigans like that. But a She-Lord is just a straightforward, clear, cloud trapezing thug, and that's big. And you don't really want to be cloud trapezing with sorceresses; they're a little flimsy. Although, somebody mentioned that they will thug with Beanshi, which are kind of comparable to the median sorceresses with a little different sets of pass. But we need not go too far with that.
Nah, it's. I think if you're going to do something with Numidian, it's a trick or a niche thing where they have the pass. You're going to have them jump in with something else that's going to put a little bit of skelly spam in front of them, and then they're going to cast something like Wailing Winds.
Now, one of the things I had talked about is we didn't pick any Astral yet, and or any Blood. And that may be a bit of a weakness. It may not be. We'll get to that in a moment. But the idea with Condors is, now the other thing we had considered alternate to Condors, and I gotta make a little space here. Yeah, I think I can close up a few things. Whoops. Making a mess here. We need to pick Marverni, and then in national spells, turn death off, turn national. Oh, why am I not? All schools. Oh, I had something picked. So we had talked about, this might have been an alternate for our national spell, was the Boar of Carnutes for free boars.
Yeah, and someone picked it before us.
They did.
Round before.
And we felt we would have a decent number of nature gems with 2 nature magi. So this was an interesting possibility as a national spell in our picks. But I'm going to turn it off because we didn't take it. So, all right. So that talks about our first, all 3 picks. Is there anything else really to say about these? I mean, Condors, people kind of know about them. They're superb patrollers. They are also stealthy. You get a lot of them. They're very cost effective. They're sacred. And then
and fit with our air death theme.
Right. Absolutely.
And I think point out that's one reason, as opposed to and this is really where your expertise, and you brought it up as why not do something like a Helheim from a death gem perspective, but the air gem for Moria is a little bit more balanced with its air death distribution, so it gives us some flexibility there that maybe like picking Satis as a base nation, which is mostly death gems, works out very well for us, I think.
Yeah, we could have picked a base nation with more death gems and less air, but the balance, and the other thing was there was some significant reasons that it was nice to have a bit of water gems. I thought that was pretty good. Yeah, because we get some water.
What was for the long time, we looked at a mage that was, or one of the summon spells.
It was the Nagini.
Ah, that's it, right.
Yeah. the Nagini of Bandar. So we take a look here. Oh, sorry. And we had talked about, this wouldn't be a bad way to use our water gems.
Mm-hmm.
So here it is, Nagini. Now, we wouldn't have had very many of these at all. And what they would have added is potentially, see, they're another seducer, so that was kind of doubling up on a roll. They would have given us a tiny bit of astral, but that's 1 and 4 at 25 water gems, and that's a secondary gem. A little bit touch and go.
Yep.
So we sort of went no. But it is I should just bring them up again. But they're another seducer. They're quite a good thug because they actually have dual form. In their stealthy form, they swap over to this. And then if this one gets killed, it reverts back to the Naga form. So you've got a total of, what are we getting here? 32 hit points.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of hit points for a thug. If we compare that to the She-Lord, where did it go? 15 hit points. So, and solid thugging paths, plus seducing. So, and they could swarm in seduction. So they're strong, but that's a lot of water gems. So I think we made the right decision to skip that one. So we are on, we're ready for talking about our 4th pick. You change the windows again. Go back to the spreadsheet. We'll go back to the picks and down to 4th pick. Here we are. So now we had some skeptical, why did we pick this Kanara? And, some people said, but you're going to have a hard time summoning it and it's going to come late and yada yada. But we already kind of knew, you and I had both discussed that we were going to go with Scales and a Rainbow Bless. And then the question was, so you can see we picked the gray one. Now, we had adequate numbers of pretender choices in the picks, but the gray one has some advantages, some disadvantages. It's one of the cheapest ways to go rainbow. And the next one is Frostfather. We also debated maybe the Great Enchantress for free astral gems, or one of the ones that gives free gems. But eventually we did settle on. And this is a freebie pick, right? If we look at the rules, you get to pick an extra pretender chassis that doesn't cost you anything else.
Yep. Same thing with the national item and sort of the national spell. You get those. You can't replace it with anything else.
That's
so
right.
You either pick it or you don't. And I don't know why you wouldn't pick one even if you didn't have, like the pretender. I was like, well, I don't know what's the best pretender chassis, if it came down to that. But we had a plan, so we sort of knew the direction we were going.
That's right. So it wasn't really that hard, and we may have not ended up using it, but we did. Oh, well, we'll get to that. We did end up taking advantage of the gray one. We should open up that that item, because that was an oddity. And so if we jump back to items, so I'm going to close some of these now that we've talked them through. We'll bring over the last few picks.
Yeah, and that was another one. We had something else slotted for that pick, but someone picked it a few turns before us. So
the item.
We were going to go with the elemental. Was it the armor of 5 elements or something like that?
Yeah, we looked at that one.
But that got
so let's see
picked.
here. So the ones we were considering, Oppressor. This one we considered. And and this one, and 5 elements, armor of 5 elements.
Yep.
Right. So all these items can be forged by our master smiths. Because they're relatively, well, the armor of 5 elements would have been crazy cheap.
Yes.
But did we miss out on that? I should have a look here. Let's take. I'm going to jump back to the picks for a second.
Yeah, we did. It went a couple picks, I think, before our pick.
We should look for items here.
They're light blue.
Yeah. Somebody pick it? Gin bottle. Here it is. Armor of the 5 Elements. Yeah, it was just picked just before us. Yeah. So that's why we didn't do that one. And then Oppressor's Headband, I think, did get picked.
Yeah, next 2 picks after us. To the left.
There it is. That's right.
Yep.
But we had already kind of decided that maybe that really wasn't doing that much for us. But let's look at those items and see what benefits we were looking to get out of those. So the Mercy brand, we're looking at some fear, built-in fear.
It also has patrol bonus, which was the other thing. Inquisitor. You know, but it's a benefit, so it's not. It's free, right?
Yeah, basically.
Something we don't have on any of our units. Whether
and depending on, I mean, that's a fairly expensive thugging weapon, but adding some fear is pretty significant. So it's going to depend on a lot on how our site searching goes. Then the Oppressor's Headband basically provides you with Communion Master, and that was the idea behind it, right?
Yep.
On the other hand, we don't really have too much trouble. I should have kept open Master Smiths. They're not showing up here. Should have kept them open because we're actually talking again about...
Because you have Pretenders selected, that's why.
Ah, right. So, it's kind of important, like, talking about either the Oppressor's Headband or any of these others, just to have a reminder of the randoms on Master Smiths. So they're basically elements with a slight chance of astral. But we should have enough of them that we should get an astral one, and then we can make matrices. I think it's almost guaranteed because we've already done testing and determined that, you know, we're going to have 10 of these very early, and we're going to end up with 30s and 40s of these guys.
Yep.
So we should have every possible random combination we need to forge.
Yeah, you know, the interesting thing, we spent a fair amount of time talking about the Master Smith because we actually there was 3 choices. There's the Warrior Smith,
there is
EA Ohm, and then there was the Ancient Smith, which is that Shiniyama or T&Chi? I forget which.
Oh, this is mucking up again on me. What the heck?
Commanders.
Oh.
Yeah,
There we go. Yeah, so we got the Warrior Smith. Not quite as much forge bonus, only 1. And the randoms are okay, maybe just a wee bit better, but they don't have any astral.
No.
So that's
and then there was the Ancient Smith, and the Warrior Smith's cheaper. That
right.
was the other thing that we were paying attention to. We were very cognizant of the cost of units.
Well, with 4 Magi, all fairly pricey, because we didn't buy like a 60 gem cheapo. Ancestor Smith, right?
Oh, Ancestor Smith, yeah.
Yeah, this one here. So it's got the nice randoms, you know, quite good randoms, no fire. But
had death, you know, for at least, again, fitting with the theme of the nation. Research was decent at 13.
Well, and you're guaranteed to get an astral one.
Yep. But 220 gold compared to the 135.
Yes.
And the 85 for the other one. Now, he is sacred, so there's that. But
I think that's a good point on the discussion, is just evaluating. But, you know, the overall agreement is this is the best smith in the game. And part of it is just the forge bonus at 2.
Yeah.
After you add a dwarven hammer, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, you start forging things for 1 gem.
Exactly.
You can't beat that.
No. So, we did not pick these guys, and we can move the Master Smith out of the way. And we did not pick the Oppressor's Headband, and we did not pick the armor. So here's our final picks.
For the Mercy brand was the other thing is the fatigue damage.
Yes.
And that's important, I think, in the context of what you look at, like, as people either watch the other videos or look at the other nations. There were a lot of SCs picked in this game.
There were. And the ability to go whack on them and knock them down with fatigue. Although we do have quite a few options there. I mean, yes. We've got nature, so we can make axes of hate.
Yep.
We have quite a few options if fatigue play is possible.
Yep.
Plus,
it's just
we can do rigor.
Sure oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, we could do rigor mortis. We could do relief. Mm-hmm. We could make that play. We've got possibly we could do what do you call it? The cold chilling spell or whatever. But we have a number of options for fatigue plays. Or we just harass SCs and try to charm them. That's the other thing, is if we go back to the Dryads, I believe one of the reasons we liked the middle-aged Dryad is its randoms. There's a good shot of a Nature 2, almost guaranteed, yes. And then you throw on a Thistle Mace and now you're charming. Whereas I believe the LA and the early and late-age Dryads, randoms were just not quite as good.
No, they were both. This was the best random options pathwise for the Dryads. And so that was it was certainly something as we watched other nations pick that we needed to make sure we had tools in our tool belt to address those situations.
That's correct.
Whether it was through spells, but magic is one of those. The other thing that's I guess very prominent with this nation that we paid a lot of attention to was the research capability and trying to make sure we could outpace anyone else.
Well, very early we'll likely be building owl quills, and we could very quickly just bring up, we actually have reasonable access to all of the research items. So we get the owl quills first, and potentially we're forging them for a single gem. And then we get the lanterns. Well, actually, the next one we could do is skull mentors, because they come at 4.
Yep.
Now, we won't get the discount on these. So, given all of our needs for death gems, I'm a little skeptical if we'll make them.
I don't. I was thinking we'll go quills, and then I think because we'll, based on the testing, the as quickly as we should be able to move up the research tree.
That's right.
We should be able to get to lanterns fairly quickly.
I think so, and I mean we have to balance if we're making quills, we have to balance making quills with summoning condors.
Yes.
And that's going to be a bit dependent on are we at war or are we at peace.
Yep.
But
I
we
think
could
that's
be.
The other piece of that you just brought up was the beauty of the Master Smith is you start. That's a big difference between spending 4 or 1 gems on an item that you're making, right? Because condors are 9 air gems each. So if you're doing that kind of savings, basically for us, we get an extra set of condors based on our savings out of basically every 2 alquils.
Why is that stupid hammer not showing up? If I got the name wrong. There it is. Well, I don't know why that didn't show up. But, so the clincher here is these are pretty critical to us, but this is going to take some site searching because we have no natural death income. So, we might end up making quills with just the Smith Forge bonus for 3 for a little while. Depending on how site searching goes. But once we can make our first hammer, then we can pump the quills out dirt cheap. So this is very significant, and another reason why people were going, oh my god, they got Master Smiths. I know Lucid wanted them and we got them before he did.
Yes.
So this is a core element, but we should talk about this idea of the Kanara I mean, I would argue that we were down to, there weren't really any more picks we needed to fit with what we wanted to do. And I thought it would be good if we had some kind of an astral mage, particularly a flying one, that had the capability of letting us do anti-magic or even Will of the Fates, other sorts of things. And these guys can forge a skull cap without having to empower. So we can get our first astral booster, put that on an astral smith. Now we can make crystal coins. You know, I think they fill a gap. They're pricey, and it's going to take some luck that we can get the pearls. But they're not coming till fairly late. And somebody said, how are you going to summon them? Well, we already knew we'd be going with a rainbow pretender. So I need a quick bio break. I'm just going to put the recording on pause for a moment. All right, I'm back. And so we've talked about the Kanara.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to talk about that is to keep in mind that this was a spell, so it wasn't a unit that we could take here
No.
with this pick. We had to pick, so basically you're either going to pick some type of national spell, evocation, or something like that, or it's going to be some type of summons. It's really what it comes down to. And when you look at the options, we had another need to maybe find a flying unit that could lead some condors around, with that kind of map move and overtrain. Again, later in the game, but to your point, it gives us a little bit of astral, which, was something we kept trying to fit in somewhere, but we're always having a hard time. And the one unit that I looked at earlier, although I don't know what unit in our lineup we would have swapped out for it, was the Huron Priest from Nazca.
That's correct.
Which, obviously can fly, can get astral in its mix, death 2 typically.
We also talked about the fact that if you look at the Huron Priest, because we didn't pick Nazca as the nation, we don't get its reanimation factor.
And since you couldn't pick Nazca, no one does. So that was something that, is I think a pretty big benefit of that unit, but it is not in this game. But for just a mage, it certainly fit a need, but someone else picked it, so it sort of made it moot. But that would have but again, are you going to not take the Master Smith? Are you not going to take the She-Lord?
Or the Dryad?
Because, the problem with the Huron Priest is that its leadership is somewhat low. It had its drawbacks at the end.
Well, and I think we should comment here. By this point in time, we kind of had a leftover pick, and a national spell was something that was available and didn't take up another place in the sets of picks. It didn't take a unit or it didn't take a commander.
Yeah.
It was what was left as freebies was one national spell and one national item. That was what left. And if you look at the picks, almost everybody used up their final picks on a national spell and a national item because they had put together their core elements. So they weren't particularly concerned. Yeah. So, and as far as the gray one, and we should take a moment here, jump back to Femoria and look at pretenders. So Femoria really has more than adequate choices of pretenders. And we were particularly looking at, it doesn't show too easily here, the various rainbows, because that was our concept. So Great Sage, Frostfather, etc., etc., etc. What you get for the gray one is a little less cost, 2 starting paths, and then the option to split it into three separate sort of thugs. Although there's disadvantages to that as well. But it does mean that if one gets killed, it's a little bit easier to deal with. So, anyways, there was no other pretender chassis that I felt, and I don't think you felt, we critically required that we didn't have, because this was the easy default for everything we wanted to do. So we were really comparing, and it was a free pick. I should have mentioned that. You don't use anything else to pick this pretender. It's a free pick. It's not costing you any other pick. So why not grab one? And so I think maybe we're ready to sort of. Have we talked about all? Oh, starting army.
Yes.
We should talk about that. And it was pretty easy.
Yeah, the rules for that are obviously it has to be out of your troop lineup. You could go all commanders for your starting army if that's what you wanted to do.
True.
But it was 400 gold and 300 resource points, I think, was the limit.
I think so.
And that included, like if you wanted, you could do an indie commander and an indie scout if that's the route you want to go, but you still had to factor their cost into the overall equation.
Right. And we should mention, I mean, one advantage to picking a stealthy, fairly low-cost mage is it is kind of your backup scout. I did bring up that in the future, I think everybody should get one indie commander and one indie scout just without a pick because, well, particularly the scout, because the idea that you're going to be stuck with no scouting unless you luck out is a little rough.
Yep.
A little rough. Or you could change up the pop types. You could do a mod where in all the pop types there's indie scouts in every province. I actually think that would be the way this game should go anyways, but I'm a scout nut.
Yeah, I think to solve that point, you should at least have the starting, and I agree with you. I mentioned the same thing to Lucy, that you probably should start with a commander scout.
He agreed it's a good idea in the future.
Yep.
Because the fact that you have to spend a mage pick to get a formation leader is a little of a bummer.
Uh-huh. But it gives you, and I'll say when you asked me to do this, when I saw it posted, I really wanted to do this, but I wasn't sure that I would necessarily have the time. And when you asked me, it was like, yeah, okay, sure, because I love this concept. This is, I think, another unique element to Dominions that, a lot of times when you look at a nation, it's like, man, this nation would be really cool if it had X. So you can sort of do that with this type of concept, and it makes it interesting. So I'm really looking forward to see how this game plays out, because I think it's going to be pretty wild.
It's going to be very interesting. I, in the past, have sort of avoided draft games, partly because the upfront effort is really high, and I guess we're lucky that it's actually Lucid who's running this, because he has the how would I put this, the community authority and the reliability to get this actually underway. I've seen these things sort of fall apart, that people can't get people going to get their picks done. They take a month or 2 months or whatever to go through the draft process, and you start losing people's interest and they quit. And now you're looking for substitutes, and you haven't even started the game. So if it had not been Lucid running this, I don't think I would have tried a draft game, because I've been too often in, not even as complex as a full draft like this, but I've too often joined a game that never got going because it didn't attract the players who understand that this is double extra hard work, like triple or quadruple the work of just joining a normal game. So it's going to take your effort.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I think there is someone who's running this has to know how to put together the mod for it, so it's not just a simple process. There's a lot of going, and when you asked me to do this, it had already been out there for a while. We were sort of one of the last groups of people to join, last 2 or 3.
Well, I was pretty overwhelmed by the picks. Yeah.
Right. And I think I would have, having done it, having another week or two to sort of research and prepare for this. I know some of that's probably on my lack of experience with a lot of the nations in the game, but because I think some people can just rattle off, oh yeah, this guy and this guy, and this unit and that unit.
I would have just slapped something together if I was on my own. I probably would have done it in a day and just said, good enough.
I think some people did just that, which is fine. I mean, it's sort of the point of this game, right? It's part
Hmm.
of it's this is fun. I think everyone's in to try to play and win, but I think some went. We'll go the meme route for this and pick. I mean, because you got the was it the Lost Draconian Tyrants which are um, a unit, so they get them on turn one. They didn't pick Phalegra as their base nation, so that'll be interesting to see
Good grief.
how this goes.
Well, a comment related to that, but maybe I'll swap windows now and bring up Pretender design. So now actually, so I can turn the mod on. I didn't have the mod turned on before, as I thought we would discuss without the mod on. But the final mod is made with all the picks, and since we've discussed our picks, here we are. And this means now we can look at, so we pick our nation, Vinlande, which is our goat curry, and we've got our picks, Nemedians, She-Lords, Dryads.
I think you have to, before you start on the units, you have to highlight the flag.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. And we have to put a call out here to Naira, who, can I make it bigger? No, we'll see it bigger in a minute. And then I'll, oh, here it is. So not too shabby. So there's my hat and the goat.
Yeah, excellent flag.
Shout out to Naira for the flag. There's some really fun flags in this. Lucid had one that looks a little sort of like the Red Cross or something.
Yeah, right.
Oh, our national description got cut off.
Got cut off. Yeah.
Oh well.
They said there was I didn't realize that there's apparently a character limit on that. So. Right.
Yeah. Well, whatever. We did our best. So should we just kind of look through Pretenders or just show the one we've got? We're coming on to where are we at here? We're getting close to the hour, which is sort of my target.
Yeah,
got about 8 minutes.
Talk about the one we picked. I mean, everyone can look at the basic. I mean, this is vanilla, Femoria Pretenders with the gray one added to it.
Yeah, we do have some of the. I didn't turn on all the mods. We have Lucids, Gem Gens, and things like that, but none of them have any effect on this part. So, where is she? We'll just load her. Oops. Here she is. Dun, 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 dun. Middle age.
No, that's right.
Bobby Ross. Yeah, there we go. So there we go. So there's our Pretender. So a general purpose rainbow bless imprisoned with quite good scales. And we spent a lot of time sort of playing around with these to sort of get optimization. Sloth 2 seems to be the magic number, given that we're gold dependent and recruitment point dependence. We didn't really want too much turmoil. We ended up with a rec point trouble. And we really do want heroes, and we really do want a broad selection of gems. So both, I think you and I both agreed, luck was better than order for us in this game.
Yeah, so that's the other thing to mention. Your base nation, you get the heroes and the items. So again,
that's right.
The thing for Femoria was the Spear of the Morgan for their national item. And they have really good, and maybe one of the best heroes in the High King in Baylor. He's a pretty good SC in his own right, but he comes later in the game, and you can't always count on those. But
so there's a couple surprising tidbits here. There was no really good death blesses that we needed, so we didn't really muck about with that, unless we went 4, and that's pricey. We did go, you did some testing and found that the Vanheers really do need Unbreakable, and so that cost us about 1 scale to go to Earth 4, not quite. And then because we saved a little on the death, going Nature 4 gave us a Nature Bless, because it was either Death 3 Nature 3 or Death 2 Nature 4. So it turned out the points just added up a little bit better. Maybe we want to back out here and demonstrate making this, because I think actually it's sort of interesting to see just how the costs worked. So and we ended up About, well, we've got perfect points left over with the gray one, ever so slightly better than the Frostfather.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very small difference. And we did go imprisoned. Everything is not incarnate. We bounced around back and forth between heat and cold. Really didn't matter a whole heck of a lot. And I mentioned, and we looked at it going drain 3, but your testing demonstrated that even with Smiths who are immune to it, all of our other researchers are not, and it just slowed us down. So I think we're solid. And then bless-wise, we debated attack versus major fire, but you tested and found that the Vanheers don't really need more attack. And then we talked about swiftness, but we've already got fast ordinary troops and fast condors, so that didn't gain a lot, but shock resist is really nice. But the Vanheers did particularly need defense skill. Makes a significant difference.
In the testing, just to point that out, it was to make them, I guess, highly more survivable. You had to go with air 6, water 6 to get double up on swiftness and defense, and that just cost us too much scales.
It was pretty brutal on a rainbow, and if we changed up to like an air water titan or immobile things, we just lost so many other things that we really I felt we wanted. So if we jump down here, and then we decided low light was worth it. The other option was spirit sight, but that would have cost more. See, that's a full scale for spirit sight, whereas we can get low light to sort of get us where we need to be. And then I didn't feel like a single hit point was worth the effort, so we grabbed the poison resistance. The nature blast was, I suppose we could have even dumped nature blast at all. We could have, but because I didn't see much in the way of potential poison play nations coming into the game. But foul vapors is so oppressive. The easiest counter is just grab some poison resist.
But we have the ability to cast it.
We do.
Correct. So
we have the potential.
Yes.
No, we do. Dryads. We can get a Dryad. We're going to need a few boosters. Because I think we can only get either Nature 1, Water 1, or Nature 2, no water. So we're going to need some boosters, and quite a bit of boosters to get foul vapors up.
So what is it? Nature 4?
3. Nature 3, Water 3, but it's 3 gems, so you can't boost with an extra gem.
Right.
In the base game. So, yeah, I think we've done it. I think we've adequately discussed this. I'm not really sure. Yeah, I think we've covered sort of, here's our initial start. Now, we're pre-recording this a month or more before it's going to be published because, of course, we don't want to publish this and tell all our opponents all of our ideas.
Correct.
Any final words?
Nope. I just, this is, if you ever get a chance to do one of these and it's run well, it's, I would highly recommend it. I enjoyed the whole process so far.
And I should mention, I believe that we have all 12 teams are going to be recorded and published independently. I think all 12, because we have Lucid, we have General Confusion, we have myself, we have Psy, so on and so forth, RCK, and I'm already starting to make sure there's subscriptions and or links in my videos on YouTube that
do we have time to go back and look at
the other guys?
The list of people that are in this game?
The list of players? Yes.
Yeah.
We have as much time as we need. I just have sort of a thing where I kind of like to be around an hour.
Okay.
It's sort of a magic number I've noticed. So here's our picks. So
and should mention, this is a team sort of based, sort of like the Hydra game.
This is a Hydra game. Yeah. 2 players playing 1 nation, helping each other out. So, if somebody can't make a turn or So off the top, Zan is a YouTuber. Both Lucid and Sakane have channels. I don't know if Grandpa and Pendragon have done YouTube before. They may or may not. Don't know about Shit for Brains and Hezekiah. I am clearly a YouTuber. Actually, maybe it's not quite 12. No, there's general confusion. So he for sure does YouTube. RCK is definitely going to be recording this. So that's at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams for sure are going to be recording and publishing.
Warpman and Zero, I think they're doing one.
I think they are.
Yep, which they said on the channel.
Well, Zero is an active person on my Discord.
Right.
And lately everybody knows him as Alfarius because he went and he went and mucked about with his nickname on Lucid server, but he shows up correctly as who he really is on my server.
Right.
And you could kind of tell by the his avatar. It's the same avatar. But I know it messes me up. And then he and whoever who's the other Alfarius?
Isn't Warpman one of them?
Is it Warpman? I think it's... Is there 3 now? And they've all got almost identical avatars. They're just slightly different. They're that blue little anime figure. Anyways, frankly, it just messes me up. It totally messes me up. But I'm not a big meme guy, and I'm not an anime guy. And I often get totally lost when people even mention things like Pepega or that frog, Pepe the Frog. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm starting to get the hang of it, but...
It's the old guys like us. We don't pay that. That's like not important stuff. So our brain doesn't need to register it. It takes many a bunch of time for it to finally sink in, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, there's that, and I don't hang out on Reddit or some of the more edgy online locations. I have no issue with them, but I just don't tend to hang out there.
But
I've got enough on my plate.
The thing with this group of people is, right, there's some really good players in this game.
Oh yeah, there's top skill players. All right, yeah, I think I'm happy with what we've covered.
Yep.
Well, thanks everybody. When you see this, we will be well underway. We'll be probably on turn 30, and right along with when this comes up, we should be able to show our first few turns.
Perfect.
All right. Have a good one, folks.
See you.